Bersih. Alhamdulillah kayak paling selamat pedot nang besuk sih Anas.
Lah itu loh dari
Iya, banyak. Tapi ngalor. Wong sapi teko gen aku barang sing. Oh, iki dijogo iku.
terkait perkembangan erupsi Gunung Semeru, ini warga sudah mulai memadati kembali. Di mana warga tadi sempat kembali ke rumah masing-masing, tetapi selang 1 jam kemudian ini masyarakat sudah mulai berhamburan keluar lagi karena sudah ada rumor keadaan Gunung Semeru kembali erupsi lagi. Begitu menurut informasi dari warga. Entah betul tanda itu kami belum bisa memastikan secara langsung, cuma ini kami sudah nanya-nanya ke masyarakat begitu.
Karena itu
مسیر فلکی زندان تا پل علی هاشمی. هر سال همیشه همینطوریه. هیچ کس هم نمیاد رسیدگی بکنه این آقای سرپیش چجوری دفع بشه. لطفا این انتشار
كف حسين، هلا مش وقتها. يا شوي شوي بتطفي ستيل.
husband and wife from nearby Manning claim they're being held captive in the British Virgin Islands. Lynn and John Hines say they were taken into custody in mid-November after accidentally sailing too close to shore. The British Virgin Islands has prohibited U.S. visitors during the pandemic. Meg Oliver spoke to the Clarendon County couple who are now in a government-mandated 14-day quarantine.
This is the hotel in the British Virgin Islands where Lynn and John Hines say they've been forced to stay for almost 2 weeks.
How uncomfortable is it living there?
Extremely uncomfortable.
We've asked if they could spray for bugs, and they just ignored our request.
The couple says they, along with a friend and boat captain, were detained after their ship accidentally veered into the territory.
He immediately turned the vessel around, but before we got back to the waters, the British Virgin Islands came up upon us and they said, you need to drop your sails and you need to follow us.
The British Virgin Islands has banned U.S. citizens because of the coronavirus. In a statement, the local government said the persons were charged with illegal entry without the permission of an immigration officer. But the couple says they've yet to hear that from customs or immigration officials.
Nobody would tell us why we were here. And to this day, we still don't know.
Did you know there was a travel advisory banning Americans?
We knew that the borders were closed, but I had no idea about territorial waters.
Michael Winkelman is an expert in maritime law.
And it's really kind of absurd because if you're at all familiar with this geography, it's literally an invisible border. It's not like there's signs in the middle of the ocean that says you're crossing over from one territory to the next.
The couple says they are now awaiting COVID tests before they can have their day in court.
We want out. We want to go home.
We did nothing wrong. The captain has said he takes total responsibility, and to hold us here hostage like this, we're just a bargaining chip. We can't understand why they were doing this.
Meg Oliver, CBS
We begin tonight
News.
with that breaking news in Maple Grove. One person is still missing and at least 2 others were hurt in a fire that set off explosions tonight. There is still a lot of activity at the business on Bass Lake Road between Brockton Lane North and Lawndale Lane North. Devon Roming is live there tonight with what we know so far. Devon?
Hey, Julie, firefighters are here trying to put out the remaining hot spots in the building behind me after that fire broke out earlier this evening, shortly after 6 o'clock. Now, take a look at some of these images we received from some folks who were out here standing by as this building went up in flames. You know, what makes this incident even more frightening is that there were 3 people inside of the facility at the time of the fire, and that's according to the Maple Grove fire chief. And we're told when fire rescue crews arrived, 2 of those people were outside of the building, but the 3rd person was missing, and at this hour is still missing. Take a listen to what the fire chief said caused this fire, he thinks caused this fire, and why it spread so quickly.
They store utility vehicles, campers, boats, and this time of year they tend to take the propane tanks off and store those inside, so a pretty heavy fire load. At this point it's more a matter of digging through the debris to do the investigation and to confirm whether there's actually still a person inside.
Now, officials say 1 person was taken to the hospital with unknown injuries, while another person was treated here at the scene. And officials are actually having to bring in heavy machinery, we're told, to move some of the debris at this building to help expand their search efforts.
The Territory Government isn't shying away from the fact that its new plan for a post-COVID economic recovery is a gas-fuelled one.
What we need to see happen and clear plans around is how do we turn gas that is found in the Beetaloo into manufacturing opportunities in the Northern Territory.
The government wanted a plan to create a $40 billion economy in the medium term. It set up an Economic Reconstruction Commission to advise on this and now admits that target was overreach.
That is ambitious. Some might say too ambitious. But we figured if we're going to have this calibre of people working together for 6 months, we might as well get them to think big.
Gas development in the Beetaloo Basin and a gas-fuelled petrochemicals precinct on Darwin Harbour are prominent features of the report, which describes them as critical opportunities.
If you look at the PPE that people have worn all through dealing with coronavirus, that's made out of gas product.
The commitments to the gas industry sit alongside plans to develop solar.
It's triggered and supported by renewables. So the report buys in to the net zero emissions target that we've got.
But this hasn't impressed environment and social justice groups or the manufacturing union, who've jointly responded to the report.
I remind the Chief Minister that the Beetaloo gas fields alone will increase Australia's emissions by more than 5% of its life cycle emissions. That is unable to be offset in the Northern Territory.
This won't be happening even in the medium term, as far as we can see. That's that far off. But there is a strong reliance on that in the report, that the Beetaloo will be opened up.
Earlier this year, the Commission pushed for 30-day government approvals timeframes, and public service agencies have been asked to speed things up. Some feel controversial new laws forcing a Darwin Dan Murphy's decision took this suggestion too far, but the government disagrees and maintains the Commission had no input into this.
No and no.
Dan Murphy's is an excellent example of a government that is not listening to the community, of a government that is not following due process.
The government's asking its agencies to have implementation plans ready by early next year. And the opposition is backing the government on this, saying the suggestions from the Commission look just like country Liberals' policy. Felicity James, ABC News.
Vowing definitive punishment for those involved in the assassination of one of Iran's top military scientists, believed to be linked to Tehran's nuclear program. This comes as the Pentagon orders the USS Nimitz back to the Persian Gulf, though claiming it was only deployed as a backup for troops being pulled out of Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's bring in now Fox News senior strategic analyst and retired four-star General Jack Keane to weigh in. General, good morning. As always, thank you for being here. So when you look at this assassination that we believe was likely done by the Israelis, what is the impact of this?
Well, I think clearly what they're trying to say, the Israelis, certainly they have intelligence that we're not privy to have publicly. Certainly the United States is sharing that with them. And the Israelis have always believed, and they had the evidence to prove it, that Iran really intends to build a nuclear weapon. They went into Tehran in 2018 in January and cleaned out a warehouse of classified information.
He said this was a criminal act and highly reckless. It risks lethal retaliation and new round of regional conflict. Iranian leaders would be wise to wait for the return of responsible American leadership on the global stage to resist the urge to respond against perceived culprits. Was this a criminal act? Was it reckless? I mean, he probably would have said the same thing about killing Qasem Soleimani.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. It takes a lot of gall to say something like that in the face of what Israel is dealing with Iran. I mean, Iran is a threat to the United States. They've proven that. They've blown up our embassies. They've killed our soldiers in Iraq. They've killed thousands of us in the 40 years. But they're not an existential threat. They're not challenging the survival of the United States. Nuclear weapons in their hands with ballistic missiles and the continuous and repeated threat to destroy the state of Israel. Iran is an existential threat to the survival of Israel. That is why their actions are so different than ours. That is why their determination and resolve is so different. And I'm stunned that a former CIA director would not recognize this level of intensity and determination for what it really is to protect.
Florida has now become the third state to top 1 million cases of COVID-19 since the pandemic began.
With 8,800 cases added across the state today, there are questions about whether we'll start seeing new spikes in Northeast Florida after some recent public events. News4Jax reporter Eric 𝐓𝐈𝐌𝐄 joining us live along the St. Johns River to explain.
Yes, 4 nights ago, large crowds of people gathered here along this pathway here next to the St. Johns River to watch that annual light boat parade and, of course, the fireworks display here on the river. Some of those people, or shall I say many of those people, were wearing a mask, but many were not. And now there's concerns over whether or not we'll start to see a spike in cases as a result of holiday events like that one. As of Monday afternoon, Florida officially surpassed 1 million cases of COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic back in March. Doctors we spoke with say there's a reason why we continue to see new cases months later.
People are exhausted. They're exhausted by this.
We are all so tired of this. It's been going on for so long now, and people just want a little bit of normalcy back.
Evidence of normalcy was this past weekend when large crowds of people closely gathered along the St. Johns River in Jacksonville to enjoy the annual light boat parade. In this video, many people are wearing a mask, but there are a lot of people who are not wearing a mask. There is also people smoking and blowing their smoke around others who are not wearing a mask. The 2 doctors I spoke with say these images raise concerns.
At least it was outside, still without wearing masks and not social distancing. It's worrisome.
Even though it's outside, would that still be considered an example of what a super spreader would look like?
It could be. It certainly could be. We've seen super spreader events that have occurred outdoors.
You could have somebody who's minimally symptomatic or maybe even asymptomatic that's passing the virus because of the close contact.
Here in St. Johns County, all public winter holiday events have been canceled because of the pandemic, all but the annual Nights of Lights. Thousands of people come here to see the place lit up. Some gather in groups and some keep their distance. Some wear masks and some don't.
Me, personally, I've had no surgery, so medical issues, so I don't want to wear it long periods of time. So,
and what about you?
It's just an open environment, just enjoying the night, sir.
Enjoying the night and hopefully not getting sick. It's worth pointing out that right after I spoke with that couple, another man who was listening to their response about not wearing a mask weighed in and said that there was no need to wear a mask because, according to him, COVID-19 was fake. Of course, that is the mentality we face sometimes when we ask people on the spot about why they do not wear a mask when they're in those crowded situations. Coming up at 11, we're going to take a closer look at the Florida COVID-19 infections and what is trending in the state.
Wildfires there in the US and California in particular, of course, but Siberia is not a place you would expect to find them. But they are there. They were particularly bad this summer, and that's got people worried. Wildfires and a record-breaking 108 degrees in a part of the world you might not expect. These sunbathers are in Siberia, posing on Instagram, cooling off on a glacier. The world's coldest region has been warming up.
Lately, it seems like the warming starts to be more pronounced in the permafrost regions, especially in Alaska and in Siberia.
What has scientists worried is that the fires themselves cause warming, meaning more fires. The permafrost is about 4 feet below the surface and several hundred meters deep. It is 50% water. As the name permafrost suggests, permanently frozen. Now it is melting, literally moving the ground. Newton Alexeyev lives in Yakutsk, a city of around 350,000. Built on permafrost, where the smoke of wildfires is clogging up the air and buildings are starting to crack.
This house went down because permafrost was melting. Do you see the ground level? It's much higher than the windows. It became a swamp. Do you see these cracks? That means like one part of the building went down. This part of the parking lot is lower than this.
And that's different from the past?
Yes.
It's not just Newton's hometown. If the ground melts, thousands of pipelines, roads, railways will collapse. The shifting ground endangering this nuclear plant, opening up huge sinkholes. Just recently, a massive oil spill from a destabilized storage
with a CBS 2 exclusive. Good evening. I'm Marisa Vedra in for Erica Sargent.
I'm Brett Edwards. A young girl mauled by her neighbor's pit bulls back home tonight, speaking only to our Jermont Terry about the dogs that tore into her flesh.
Stay still.
A grandmother changes bandages as Janila Wise is on the mends. The 13-year-old will need lots of tender care over the next few weeks after stepping into this alley behind her house.
There was 2 dogs and I've seen them before.
Those dogs would normally just bark.
I mean, every time I come out the house, they like always have to look. It's a gate right there.
But Monday night, as Janila tried tossing the trash, 2 pit bulls attacked.
I was trying to like get away, but they were still on me.
The pit bulls locked in on Janila's leg.
I felt them mostly biting on this leg.
The dog's owner rushed out but could not gain control of his pets. A few kicks allowed Janila to break free, but she fell. That's when the dogs pounced on her.
When the dog got off of me, this finger was just like pulled back and that leg was open. This ear was detached.
She broke free only after the dog's owner shot both, killing one dog.
I didn't even hear the gunshot, surprisingly. I didn't even know he had guns until they said something.
Her family jumped in the car and rushed her to the ER.
And I kept thinking about like, oh yeah, you good, you be good, but the blood was just dripping.
I was also giving affirmations, but at the same time, hearing the pain in her voice.
Grandmother Cheryl, who's a registered nurse, is grateful Janila survived this attack. And when it comes to the dog's owner,
he took it upon himself to do what was necessary to get those dogs off of my granddaughter. I'm grateful.
But the family is furious the attack happened in the first place.
You just got to know your dog and know that that particular breed needs to be chained.
The family says what played out in this alley this week is the second time those dogs brought pain to their family in a year.
Last time was Christmas Eve. I spent it at a veterinarian's office.
They claim the dogs mauled their small pet and this time left Janila like this.
We've seen where the dogs have been out before. That's, a problem.
Now, one dog was shot dead in the alley, the other injured and taken by animal control. The family tells me that the neighbor did reach out to see how Janila was doing, but they didn't have too much to say to him. They surely had a lot to say and great good things to say to the staff at Christ Hospital for taking extra good care of her. And Janila is going to have even extremely good care at home because both mom and grandma are both registered nurses. Reporting live tonight, Jamont Terry, CBS 2
sending out
News.
strike teams to set up testing centers throughout the Commonwealth. One of those will be in Butler County, but there's some confusion on when it'll be up and running. Jennifer Barrasso is in Butler tonight to explain why the site is being delayed and when it'll finally open. Jennifer?
That's right, Megan. Well, Leslie Oshie, the chair of the Butler County Commissioners, says this has been a headache. It has been a big mess. She said AMI, the testing company, contacted the county this morning about the delay, saying it was due to a lack of staffing. Wednesday morning, hundreds of people were expected to show up at the Michelle Krill Field in Butler for the start of 5 free days of COVID-19 testing, part of the Department of Health's new strike teams. Leslie Oshie is the chairman of the Butler County Commissioners.
This week was strategically good because, we have people coming back from Thanksgiving holiday, many people who were traveling or those who need to be tested.
Oshie said talks about a testing site in Butler began in October. Then less than 24 hours before the start, she said the testing company AMI emailed the county announcing a delay, citing staffing issues.
AMI, the testing company, is that they wanted to have additional staffing or they didn't have sufficient staffing. We're the only county that has had the delay.
Oshie said AMI announced a new start date beginning this Friday. She never heard from the Department of Health.
This was going to relieve, some of the hospitals' testing site capacity because they have been very, very busy.
And with nearly 4,700 COVID-19 cases, 80 deaths, and 40 patients in the hospital, Oshie says access to testing is paramount.
I'm disappointed, obviously. I think it's, especially to have to do this in the 11th hour after we had already released the information.
Now, Department of Health spokesman said the delay was necessary because of staff coming from other test sites. You're looking at Michelle Krill Field. This Friday, you can come here for free COVID-19 testing. You do not need an appointment. You do not need to show symptoms for COVID-19. It's a first come, first served basis. They have a drive-through or you can walk in to get tested. Reporting live, Jennifer
and restrictions
Barrasso,
tighten up,
KDK.
there are those desperate to see aging loved ones living now in nursing homes.
This week, a Hamilton man will take his plea to the State House. WCPO 9 News reporter Kristen Swilley shares how he's holding out hope for a shift in policy across Ohio.
Because of COVID, Scott Reynolds is only able to see his mother through the window of her facility, but he hopes speaking before state legislators Thursday will open doors.
It's finally here after 9 long struggling months.
Scott Reynolds was visiting his mother when he learned he'd have to leave her facility because of the new pandemic protocol. That was in March. He's rarely seen her since. That's why he's advocating for Ohio House Bill 770.
Which would allow a caregiver such as me, a family member, to go in a facility during a pandemic, COVID, to be with our loved one. That way they have some familiarity.
Reynolds' mother has Alzheimer's and COVID-19. He says he'd be willing to risk his safety to be with her. a message his local representative invited him to share with lawmakers.
We need to figure out a solution to where we can still be connected to that family member.
Paula Smith works for the Council on Aging, focused on seniors trying to remain independent in their homes. She says even they are feeling the strain.
We really became concerned as this drug on that seniors were feeling very isolated. They were lonely. They were feeling forgotten.
It is important for people to have visitation.
Pete Van Runkle leads the Ohio Healthcare Association. His mother has dementia and is also in a nursing home. He says virtual visitation is safest for now, but encourages facilities to allow compassionate care visits.
We would love nothing better than to be able to do that, and it's been crushing to our staff, our folks.
That day may be months away. But Reynolds says even if it's too late for his family, the bill could make a difference for others statewide.
I know that I've done my best and I've done what I was supposed to do.
Reynolds is scheduled to speak in Columbus this Thursday at 11 a.m. Kristen Swilley, WCPO.
We've been very concerned about this for the last couple of weeks.
More than 15% of North Texas hospital beds have been filled with COVID-19 patients for 5 days now. If we hit 7 days above 15%, a governor's order will shut down North Texas bars and drop restaurants to 50% capacity in this 19-county region. Dallas County Health Director Philip Wong doesn't expect this rollback to change much.
Going from 75 to 50% isn't going to make a difference. It's hard to even tell, or enforce or anything, a difference between 75% and 50%.
Well, we've been extremely fortunate that the vast majority of businesses have been able to comply.
Chris Porter from TABC said they have 220 agents working to make sure restaurants and bars follow the rules.
Since the end of June, we've conducted more than 24,000 inspections across Texas, and of those, we've seen fewer than 700 violations.
But Porter said in recent months, 2,800 Texas bars have now converted to restaurants. So that means if bars shut down in North Texas, many now operating as a restaurant will remain open at 50% capacity.
If residents of Dallas, Denton, or Tarrant counties are out and they notice a business where there could be cause for concern, we do ask they contact TABC.
Dr. Wong is worried about the next few weeks.
With just having gone through the Thanksgiving holidays, with the colder weather and people spending more time inside, with everyone having COVID fatigue, it is not at all surprising that these numbers are where they are, and we anticipate they're going to just keep going up.
In Tuesday, we have a story about a man who gave up a successful business to hit the road and cave back.
As soon as I saw how bad the situation was here in Baltimore, I had to stay.
Well, WMAR 2 News' Eddie Kadam shows us how Pastor Josh found his calling helping people living in homeless encampments.
Pastor Josh gutted and painted this old bus and turned it into a rolling beacon of hope.
This will try your faith. I mean, these are very hard situations a lot of these people are living in.
He and his wife traveled to encampments in the United States and Puerto Rico.
Underneath different bridges like Newark, New Jersey, New York City, Baltimore, Philadelphia, all the different places that are having a spike in homelessness due to COVID-19.
He used to own an RV business, but now he lives on the bus and goes back to Delaware to pick up donations. He says he was called for a higher purpose and came to the encampment under 83 in Baltimore to help. We first met a couple weeks ago.
Clothing, food, blankets, coats, things of that nature, because a lot of people are getting rid of their beach homes right now after COVID as well, because they can't afford to keep their beach homes, but they have a phenomenal amount of clothing in them that they're giving away.
He sometimes spends months at an encampment helping to connect people to resources they need and giving out the donations that he collects.
I know it's generally a saying, but I can literally turn their frown upside down and make them smile.
A calling answered and a growing mission as he rolls out to places where people can use some help and hope. In Baltimore, Eddie Kadam, WMAR 2 News.
And to learn more about Pastor Josh, just head to our website.
To some updates about a vaccine against the coronavirus infection. Russia's coronavirus vaccine, that is Sputnik 5, has arrived in India for adaptive phase 2 and 3 clinical trials. This comes after Russia and India agreed to mass produce the vaccine in India. The Russian Investment Direct Fund and India's Dr. Reddy's laboratories have initiated the clinical trials in the country. They got the approval from the Drug Controller General of India to conduct phase 2 and phase 3 trials. The vaccine arrived in India last week and will be mass-produced by the Indian pharmaceutical firm Hetero. Hetero has agreed on a deal with Sputnik that it will produce more than 100 million doses in the country. Around 100 million doses of the vaccine will be manufactured by hetero Biopharma in Hyderabad. The Russian Wealth Fund says that it plans to start producing the vaccine in the beginning of the year 2021. Earlier, the CEO of Russian Direct Investment Fund also said that India will get the vaccine on a priority basis. The Russian vaccine Sputnik 5 became the first vaccine in the world to get registered. Its makers have said that the vaccine is 95% effective in preventing COVID-19. Earlier this month, Russia said that it has started the mass production of the vaccine. Russia also said that more than 20 countries have already pre-ordered about 1 billion doses of its vaccine. Kremlin is now rushing to keep pace with Western competitors in the race for an
have
effective
charged
vaccine.
𝐖𝐈𝐌 Copper with illegally polluting the Ohio River. U.S. Attorney Scott Brady says 𝐖𝐈𝐌 Copper discharged oil, copper, and other pollutants into the Ohio and then allegedly tried to cover it up with a false report. Prosecutors say it happened
more
over
than
the course of
8,800 new cases today. Nearly 3,000 of those are here in South Florida. And new tonight, confirmation on who will be first in line for the first vaccine.
The first batch of doses could arrive here in just weeks, and as expected, our frontline healthcare workers will be among those taking priority. A panel of experts assembled by the CDC has decided which Americans will receive a coronavirus vaccine first. The approximately 20 million doses that could be made available by the end of the year will go to healthcare workers and nursing home residents. Federal documents obtained by CBS News point to December 15th for states to start receiving the Pfizer vaccine. The Moderna vaccine would first become available a week later. Both are waiting on emergency FDA authorization. Jackson Memorial Hospital is set to get its first shipment in mid-December.
With the vaccine, we are hoping the initial data looks very promising, showing over 90% for the two first vaccines that are expected out. So with this ability for us to vaccinate and have protection against COVID-19, it would allow us to start looking forward.
Jackson Health System, which sent us this video, is equipped with state-of-the-art freezers meant to preserve the vaccine. Hospital staff opting to get the vaccine will be prioritized by highest risk to lowest risk. As Americans struggle, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introduced a $908 billion COVID relief package before key programs expire at the end of the year.
We cannot abandon the American people, the families who are suffering at this time.
This 4-month COVID-19 emergency relief package will help get us through the hardest months of winter and into a new administration.
With cases rising, so are restrictions. Most of California is already under a mandatory curfew, and the governor warns he may institute a full stay-at-home order.
Look at some of the overseas challenges that Joe Biden will face when he takes office. In the Middle East, Iran's leaders are seething over the assassination of the country's top nuclear scientist, and ISIS may be planning a comeback. CBS's Holly Williams reports tonight from Erbil in northern Iraq.
The alleged mastermind of Iran's nuclear weapons program, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, was buried with full military honors today. He was ambushed with a remote-controlled machine gun mounted on a car that later blew up, according to Iranian media reports. Iran's president blamed Israel for the killing on Saturday and vowed retribution in due time. It's just one of the problems that President-elect Biden will inherit in this unstable part of the world. This month, the Pentagon announced that U.S. troops in Iraq would be cut by 500 just before Biden takes office, a move critics say could give a boost to militia groups backed by Iran that have fired scores of rockets at U.S. targets this year alone. At this command center for airstrikes in Baghdad, a place the U.S. military calls the Shark Tank, General Ryan Rideout told us that constant surveillance is also needed to stop ISIS from regrouping.
If you stop patrolling, stop going out, you potentially could have it come back.
It's thought that thousands of the extremists are still at large. In neighboring Syria, we went on patrol with the 82nd Airborne Division. They're working to stop ISIS regaining control of lucrative oil facilities like this one.
If we're not able to move around, that means ISIS can. That means ISIS is getting in with the population. They're influencing them.
A surprise explosion at the Iraq-Syria border sometime between Saturday and Sunday, now confirmed by local officials to have killed a commander of the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. Senior IRGC commander Muslim Shahdan and several of his entourage, killed in his car in an apparent overnight drone strike. And just a day after the assassination in Tehran of Iranian nuclear scientist and military head Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, an attack blamed on Israel and now also on local Iranian opposition groups.
متاسفانه عملیات بسیار پیچیده‌ای بود و با کارگیری تجهیزات الکترونیکی رخ داد. هیچ فردی در صحنه حضور نداشت. اما سرنخ‌هایی وجود داره. ضمن که اون کسی که این طراحی رو کرده برای ما مکشوفه که کیست.
State health leaders say Utah is ready to receive its first doses of the vaccine, something that could happen in a matter of days. Fox 13's John Funke joins us live to explain the timeline. John.
Yeah, guys, back in October, the health department here announced that those essential healthcare workers would be first in line to get the vaccine. And if all goes according to plan, the vaccine could be here for them by the end of next week.
Utahns should feel comfortable and confident in the plan that we've put together, and we're ready to execute it.
After what has seemed like an eternity, there's finally some light at the end of a very dark tunnel.
I think it's reassuring for us that the work group that we put together and who has been looking at this issue for the past many weeks and months essentially came to the same conclusion.
In anticipation of a coronavirus vaccine being approved by the FDA, a CDC panel recommended the first batch of doses be administered to healthcare workers on the front lines of the pandemic, a plan the Utah Department of Health drew up back in October.
So healthcare workers are just at a greater risk of being exposed.
The FDA is set to hold an approval hearing for the vaccine developed by Pfizer on December 10th. If it's approved,
they could be shipping vaccine within a matter of hours. And certainly not more than a full day.
The health department plans to distribute the vaccine in phases.
We've been working to identify the hospitals in Utah that are responsible for caring for the highest percentage of COVID-19 patients.
Following those essential healthcare workers, phase 2 includes those who live and work in long-term care facilities, people who work in essential industries like education, transportation, senior citizens, and other high-risk individuals. The group can likely be vaccinated after the new year.
The timelines are tricky and they're moving constantly. We imagine that February, March is when we will start getting into that phase 2, but it's possible that we get there earlier.
The health department hopes to have the vaccine available to the entire population by June or July, a prospect of hope, but not a reason to let down our guard.
This is not a switch. We're not going to turn this on overnight and things are going to be able to be back to normal. It's still going to be really important that people continue to take the safety precautions that they've been taking all year until there is mass uptake on this vaccine.
Another big question is just how many doses Utah will get. Well, think of it this way. Utah is about 1% of the country's population, so the state expects that the feds will send about 1% of the doses that they have available. It's a complicated process, but one that is finally becoming more clear. Live on the Hill, John Funke, Fox 13 News.
Because of the pandemic, a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are desperate.
Coming around the kitchen.
There are more crimes that are being committed.
In the NIV team, Bell Enforcement.
And I think with the quarantine, it may have been a good idea at the time, but we realize now it wasn't such a good idea for such a long time.
I got her. Put your hands up, turn around. Put your hands on your head. Don't move.
My other advocacy love is working with survivors of gun violence, because I'm a gun violence survivor. I lost a nephew to gun violence. So today what we're doing is we're working with other survivors, is giving out food to the community and also giving them a gift basket.
You're welcome, sweetie. Well, May 5th, 2014, my son got murdered down the block.
I no longer say the United States of America. Sometimes I feel like we're living in a third world country, and we're not. I mean, we need to come together and work in unity. We have been so divided. There has been so much hate.
Pray that we come together as a nation, no matter who is the winner, and that we go forward as a nation, and we'll have elections in the next 4 years. Let's do it at the voting station. Let's fight there.
Trump is acting like a spoiled brat, and he could do serious damage. For God's sakes, the man has the nuclear code. But I'm not worried about it. All I keep telling myself as a mantra, January 21st, January 21st. Obama had to leave in 2016, and Trump is going to leave in 2021.